welcome to Watches Live. We are back. We have a feature-dense array of high-end watches on the table tonight. So they're not many, but they are mighty. I'm also giving away a vintage Omega Speedmaster Professional Moon watch for the month of February. I want you to win it. You got to click the link in the description, and that will take you right to the page. Okay, guys, tonight, let's jump right into the title card, or the thumbnail with which I taunted you. This is quite simply the Audemars Piguet and the Royal Oak. The 15202 extra thin. Since 2012, of course, we've had the combination of the monotone date disc, the signature AP down at 6 o'clock, and of course AP has been doing its own tapisserie dials in-house since 2012. It's still a pantograph. It still uses a giant model of this dial and then transposes it mechanically, transcribing it onto the brass base, which is then blue galvanized to create this blue dial that is generally the exclusive domain of AP dealers and a few marquee, or I should say AP dealer boutiques, and a few marquee independent authorized dealers. Now on the case back, 3.05 millimeters thick, this is AP caliber 2121. It's the 2120 with the date. It's the old JLC 920 Bausch. It is one of the few truly hand-finished Royal Oak movements you will encounter, which is to say it is executed to a much higher level than the 3120 and the 15400 and the new 15500. The watch is ultra slim. 8 millimeters thick as my calipers measure it. It's actually slimmer than AP claims. Now here's the thing about this movement. It is a lovely anachronistic old piece. Invented in 1967 by Jaeger-LeCoultre for AP, Vacheron, and Patek Philippe. It has only ever been used by those brands. Today it's only used by AP and Vacheron, and AP uses it exclusively in the jumbo. You will not find any other jumbo made with any other movement. If you get the ultra thin, you're getting the 2121. Now the watch is extraordinary and easy to wear, and because every Royal Oak wears larger than its nominal size, I'm going to throw this one on the wrist. But I want to give a quick shout out to my friends joining me from around the world. Blue Shirt Buddha, Matt Foster, Eddie Landsberg, Jonathan Sachs, Hell Bop joining. Nope, you're not late, man. I can see Josh Beverly, Russell996, and Ian Chan joining us from Singapore. Welcome, guys. Let me show you how a 39mm Royal Oak Jumbo wears on the wrist, because it's bigger than you think. Now, it's just over 51mm if you include the solid end links, those little intermediate plots, and they do cause the watch to flare out. So when you hear 39mm Jumbo, you really want to think 41mm conventional round watch. It is a surprisingly broad thing. Now, it is absolutely pancake flat on the wrist. You can see it clings to the wrist like a limpet. Once you size it down, it fits flush, but beware, 14 centimeters circumference, probably the lower limit to wear this watch without a whole lot of fight and flare that you don't want. It's a surprisingly big little watch. Now jumping straight into the chat box, and G joining Ernesto Sanchez. Hi guys. Let's talk about a watch from the same corner of the world, the Vallée de Jeu, but a very different sensibility. Now, this is part of a model family released in 2007, and Jaeger-LeCoultre launched the Duometre based on a watch in its Heritage Gallery Museum, a Victor Piguet movement or a Bausch that JLC had improved in the 1880s to create a minute repeating chronometer. Now, they took that basic design and they recreated it in a wristwatch, and the chronograph was the first version of the new line. Twin mainspring barrels, 2 separate drivetrains, 1 balance that locks and unlocks the 2 separate drivetrains. 50-hour power reserve. You can see it's a manual wind. You actually turn the crown in opposite directions, and you wind up with a system where one ratchets while the other winds. Now turn it all over. You have a mono pusher with a foudroyant. You can see it's a 1/6 of a second chronograph. When you activate the chronograph lock, you can see you read center seconds. You read 1/6 of a second. There's a mono counter with hours and minutes, and then there's a scrolling single-digit minute disc at the base of the chronograph register. You can also see twin power reserve indicators for the 2 50-hour power reserves. Gold hands are for the time of day. Blued hands are for the chronograph. Turn it all over one more time. You can see this is a JLC that is built like a pocket watch, which actually winds up making it a JLC that looks like a Longa. It's the same material, German silver if you're in Saxony, Maillot if you're in the French-speaking watch regions. It's a nickel copper zinc that is golden in its hue because it's unplated. You have blued screws for assembly of components. You have polished screws for tuning of the movement, and then a sensational Côte de Soleil that radiates out from an imaginary center point at the base of the balance. It's an absolutely sensational watch inside and out, and it's 42mm, which means it is fairly large. Now, one feature I want to call attention to is the fact that this is a solid dial rose gold Duometre chronograph. They're almost unheard of. 90% of what you're going to see feels like it is the cutout dial, the skeleton dial, which is both more difficult to read and, in my opinion, less beautiful. So if you want something that gives you the warmth of rose gold but with the solid dial, this is the obvious choice and the rare watch to encounter. You can see it's 50 millimeters lug to lug, so it's a big boy, but it's not thick. 13 millimeters on the wrist. I owned the white gold model for years. I still love the model. I still love the series. And I still love the brand, which is why if there's a theme on the table tonight, it's probably JLC. I've got 4 of them. Jumping into the chat box right here, Naresh Pape joining, I believe from Toronto. We have JBO Surf from Adelaide. I can see Dr. Phaedrus, Alexei Simola from Finland, John Smith joining from Harrogate, UK. And I can see we have Nikolai Jensen joining from Denmark. Welcome, guys. And I can see Dave Lemieux checking in from Western Massachusetts, comparatively local. But we have a global audience, and I'm going to show you a watch with widespread appeal for global travelers. I love GMT watches for traveling. I do it all the time, and it's wonderful to be able to concretely keep track of that place where you are not. And in 2009, JLC launched this watch. 300 pieces in platinum and black ceramic, 44 millimeters. It's the Amvox 3 from the Aston Martin inspired series. You can see the dial does have a little bit of a resemblance to a 1950s, 60s, or 70s Aston Martin dashboard clock, tachometer, or speedometer, because those were made by Jaeger. This is a partnership with deep roots. It's not something that was a fly-by-night co-branding. This was decades in the making. You can see the Aston Martin wings at 6 o'clock, and if you can get super close, you can see that the bottom of the dial is uncalibrated, just as it would be on a vintage speedometer. But you can also see there's a tourbillon in there, a surprisingly discreet tourbillon. This one rotates in a 1-minute period, and then you have a unique date system whereby the date jumps from the 31st all the way to the 1st during the night, so it never covers up the tourbillon. I'm actually going to see if I can run it backwards to show you the jump in reverse. Now you can see that that date system will make the full jump across the dial from the 31st to the 1st in the middle of the night, so you never obscure the view of that gorgeous mechanism. You'll also note that there is a stub second time zone hand, and just above that, a sapphire crystal with an AM/PM. So you have that second time zone, you have the date, you have the tourbillon, all of this beautifully loomed, and the font, by the way, is the same used on vintage Aston Martin dashes. You'll also note there's a grating, much like a radiator grille, just under the applique white gold numerals. Turn it all over, and yes, the crown in platinum is designed to evoke a vintage gas cap. And now we have caliber 988. What makes it special? Well, essentially the same movement won the 2009 chronometry concours at the Horology Museum of Leloc, which is to say it went up against other brands and other models, some of which were regulated chronometry calibers from the mid-20th century, and the 978 version of this movement won out. Now, what makes this different from the 978? Well, it has more of a techno-industrial aesthetic, and it has a high-tech rotor and mass from the 2007 Extreme Lab 1. You can see there is a platinum iridium mass, which is 12% more massive than 24 karat gold. And if you look closely, you can see the spokes of the rotor are carbon fiber for lightweight to maximize the polar moment of this thing. All the mass is outboard. Automatic winding, ceramic rotor bearings, unidirectional 48-hour power reserve, and nicely hand finished. All this 50 meters water resistant, so if you wanted, you could swim with it. And you can see the case, 44 millimeters with dramatic matte finished, and briefly on the lug hoods, polished ceramic. The polished flank is actually diamond executed. You can see there's a box section of the sapphire, and then it breaks to a domed cambered profile. That is an expensive sapphire to make. This was originally a $94,500 watch. Now it's about $38,000. 300 pieces. All the metal hardware you see on there is Platinum 950. A lovely watch and one of my favorite from JLC. Jumping into the chat box, I can see we got some friend here. Josh Beverly, Tim, what are you working towards since you liquidated all the JLC? I'm thinking about a million things. Honestly, I'm thinking about putting my focus on watchmaking going forward and maybe pumping the brakes on watch collecting for a while. Also, frankly, I was thinking about law school. So that's an entirely different conversation for an entirely different day. But I think the next watch I buy is probably going to be, I'd say, the Omega X33, Gen 1 or Gen 2, and that'll probably be sometime in the middle of this year. My birthday's coming up sooner than I thought. All right, guys, I could see Aaron Murphy joining from Missouri, and I could see Hale Bop, Chicken Foot Rotor. Interesting way to think of it. Also, a super group including Sammy Hagar and Joe Satriani. Welcome, friends. I can see Mark S. Tim, when do you take the LSAT? I haven't scheduled anything yet. I think this is more one of those thought experiments, not quite a intent at the moment. And I can see McKinley Stevens would love to know what your favorite ceramic watches are. This is probably it right here, to be perfectly honest. I can't find any fault with the Amvox 3. But let me jump to another JLC. This is a ghost from Christmas past, or from Tim Mosso's past, a watch model that I've owned and which was once the flagship of my collection. This is a Reverso Platinum 2, ruthenium-coated dial, hand-painted numerals with sterling silver paint. The dial base itself is 18-karat white gold, and though you can't quite see it because, well, frankly, I need to wind the watch, but there is a coaxial power reserve right at the center underneath the hands of the watch. So the watch actually features a coaxial power reserve that's emerging from underneath the minute hand. But the action: platinum watch, white gold dial, ruthenium coated, white gold movement. 1 minute tourbillon, hand regulated, 6 positions, overcoil and free sprung. Guys, let's get as close as we can with this one. The bridges and the plates in extravagant sunburst Côte de Soleil made of 18 karat white gold. So this is a white gold movement. This was 2003. This watch came out 300 pieces made out of an intended 500. So this was 1 year before F.P. Journe went to 18 karat rose gold on his movements. JLC was doing it first. Don't you love those blued screws inside the white gold plates? I certainly do. And I love the engine turning on the chassis of the Reverso. You can also see that the guidrons have been hand engraved to arc them around the tourbillon carriage. This is the best of all possible worlds. And if you look back to the mid 20th century, JLC's chronometry competition calibers featured the exact same architecture, including bridges that you see right here. So it's a wonderful tribute to their past, even as it's also one of the most memorable recent references from the manufacturer. And by the way, platinum clasp on this one. This was before 2006 when JLC went to all white gold clasps on platinum watches. This is a platinum clasp on a platinum watch. And I can see friends joining in. The Watch Doctor, Mark S., Bobby Smith, Luis Ortiz. I can see Steve Mauger joining from Guernsey, and Eastwood Tillman, and Christopher Peterson, Alexander Pinheiro, and I could see he's saying Tim will buy more Zen. There are quite a few Zen watches I like. I'm not going to kid. I've long thought of purchasing a few more Zen and Damasco watches. Now let's jump into a German-made watch that is as stripped down, basic, and beautiful as they get. Launched in 2006, what was then known as the Senator 60s collection later became the Vintage 60s. Same great watch, same friendly folks from Saxony. 39mm stainless steel, no date. Some of the features that you really need to see up close. Let's get as close as we can, guys. The indices on this watch are not applique, and they're not printed. They are actually recessed wells in the dial. Their bases have been black polished, so you're actually looking at polished recessions that are shining through stenciled apertures in the dial. It has depth. The dial is dramatically cambered. The hands have been arced around the edge of the dial, and you can see the sapphire has been domed like a 1960s plexiglass. On the case back, you get the same treatment. Manufacturer caliber. This is the GUB 3901 40-hour automatic. A nice handsome piece with a swan's neck and a wonderful double spiral reduction wheel in the winding system. A handsome steel 39mm for $4,500. You get yourself into true luxury watchmaking as well as German watches. I'm going to throw this one on the wrist so you get a sense. You can see how this 39 wears night and day different from the Royal Oak with its integrated lugs and bracelet. This feels like a 39. This is a great watch for a small wrist, or a big one to be honest, but the fit is sensational. Now, another black dial white metal watch with a wonderful fit is this 36.3mm Patek Philippe 5055G. Now, this is a watch that has the same movement from the 5712. You could see it's the same dial layout too, but a wonderful design that has a lot of strength to it, because if you get super close, you can see that the bezel is broad and massive, which increases the perceived size and presence of the watch on the wrist. You'll also note that the bezel is seamless. It doesn't remove, so everything mechanical and as well as the dial actually go in through the back of this watch. It's a back loader. It has a one-piece bezel and case. The lugs are short but strong. It's actually only 43mm across the wrist, so if your wrist is as small as 13 centimeters circumference, this is a great option. It's also the 240 micro rotor. Again, same movement from the 5712, micro rotor, 48-hour power reserve. This is old school with the Geneva hallmark, not the Patek Philippe seal. You see those Côte de Genève stripes, you see the engine turning perlage, black polished screws with chamfered slots, mirrored anglage, and a Gyromax style free sprung balance beaten away at 6 beats per second. This is a wonderful watch and an underrated Patek Philippe. You can see that dial lustrous and glossy glossy in black lacquer, coaxial moon phase and date, small seconds, and a power reserve indicator. This watch is the business, and it'll do it on any wrist. Now, jumping back to our chat box, I can see some friends joining in from far flung with Christopher Peterson saying, Grand Seiko just launched pre-Baselworld watches with Glashutte dials. That is true. There is a new Grand Seiko Elegance collection, which is a unique combination of dress watch dial, dress watch case, and a manual wind adaptation of the 9S calibers. I want to say it's 9S63 or something like that. But they're handsome watches, especially the 3 in Urushi lacquer. There is one with a blue dial that is not Urushi, but that's probably going to wind up being the most popular of the 4. Nice pieces. I like them considerably. Now let's jump to a watch, jumping back to JLC, that is a different take on the Reverso, as we have here the 2012 model year, white gold, 50-piece, Grand Reverso Ultra Thin Skelet. Now, it is a 46.5 lug-to-lug, 27.4, 7.3 millimeter thick watch. So this is actually 0.7 millimeters thinner than the Royal Oak. All of that despite having a rotating case as the Reverso does. Now, what sets this one apart is that, and let's get super close, guys, both the movement and the chapter ring have been hand engraved. Now the movement is skeletonized and engraved. And if you're, in case you're wondering what movement they used, it started as an 849, but it's the 849R in rectangular form, 1.85 millimeters thick. It's related to the ultra thins designed for Vacheron and Audemars Piguet in the early 1950s. So 1.85 millimeter movement that is then skeletonized and then freehand engraved. The chapter ring surrounding the movement is then entirely freehand engraved, and on the dial side, over the engraving, you have a translucent enamel, not lacquer, enamel. So it is a true flinke enamel chapter ring or spacer surrounding the center. And you can see even the mainspring barrel has been skeletonized, with the spokes of the skeletonized barrel becoming the JL interlocking logo. This is as good as it gets, guys. Absolutely bewitching, enchanting, and remarkably wearable. You can see it's broad and it's flat, but I can wear it on my wrist. And I would actually say this watch is fine for a wrist down to 14 centimeters. If you can wear the Royal Oak, you can wear this, and it is ultra slim. A beautiful watch, handmade, such that even the 50 individual pieces of this series from 2012 will not be identical. No two sets of freehand engravings ever are. And JLC doing all that engraving and enameling in-house. Jumping straight into another watch that frankly is an unsung hero of Rolex. Now, you can walk into any Rolex dealer and buy a Day-Date out of the case without a weight, which is a shame, because if we were to assign wait lists and demand based on merit, the original automatic day and date would be one of the most in-demand Rolex watches. This is the Day-Date II, made between 2008 and 2015. It is a watch of 41 millimeters diameter with solid end links that give it an extraordinary presence on the wrist of almost 53 millimeters link to link. Now you can see this doesn't look like a 41. This looks like a 42 or a 43. It's slim though, 12 millimeters thick, all of white gold. It's a substantial piece on the wrist with solid link present, solid end link. This feels like a platinum Rolex from previous generations of the company. You can also see that the watch with a Cyclops eye doesn't have nearly as crowded a dial as when you see the same magnifier on the 36mm watch. This dial's opened up a bit. It can breathe. And of course, you've got that Rolex sports watch architecture. The movement is built the same as a sub. The only difference is it does have a larger date disc. It has the day disc. It has a double quick set for those two features. So this is the 3156, a movement only ever used in the Day-Date II. And a wonderful piece, an uncommon one, with a sunburst gray dial. Let me show you something genuinely weird. I think this needs to be shown. Knew this was an $18,000 watch. When this line first debuted in 2005, it was one of the last Hysek watches created by his brand before he actually left in 2006. This is the Hysek Abyss, and it's the Explorer. So it's the Hysek Abyss Explorer, 44 millimeters, 17.3 millimeters thick, and an almost incomprehensibly huge 63 millimeters lug to lug. There's a lot going on here. Let me show you what I think are the most engaging features. Now, this is a 300-meter diving chronograph. Jörg Hysek, who started his brand in 1999, left in 2006, was the designer of the 1977 Vacheron 222. He worked for many others, Tag, Ebel, Cartier, and of course under his own name. Today he runs HD3, but this was an interesting design that he pioneered in the Abyss series. It's actually a lift lock for the bezel. So it lifts up, it unlocks, And then you can turn the diving bezel, which unconventionally features an engine turning. It has a hobnail sort of crosshatch on its dial with silvered registers, and oversized screw-down crown and pushers. It's an exotic looking thing. You can see automatic winding. It's a high grade, and I believe top or chronometer grade value 7750 based on the quality of the hairspring, the finishing, as well as the splayed spoke balance that are used. So it's a tough machine, but at its original retail of $18,000, this doesn't quite make sense. At a pre-owned price of around $6,000, it makes a whole lot more. This is a thing back in the day that was actually considered in the 2000s to be a rival to the Royal Oak offshore, and it certainly has the wrist presence to match, just not the AP price premium. A wonderful alternative if you're looking at something like an Hublot. Okay, jumping into the chat box, I can see Robin Rickett is saying that is quite a watch in every way. Yes, it is. And I can see Naresh Pape saying the Roman numerals on the Rolex Day-Date II are super sexy on presidents as well as Datejust models. And Josh Beverly, laugh out loud. I assume that must be the Hysek. Right here, Captain Zed, Abyss, crazy, good name for it. It is truly bottomless madness. Now, jumping back to oversized watches, here's one that's a little bit more accessible and, frankly, a little bit more forthright about its diving intent. A watch you can buy pre-owned for $2,500. This is the Oris Prodiver Chronograph, 51 millimeters, so it's an absolute giant, but it is wonderfully equipped. You can see it features a ceramic bezel insert and a safe dive system. So what you actually do is you lock it by pressing the surround of the bezel into place. Now I can rotate the surround, but I can't actually move the bezel. It's locked in place with that ceramic insert. The bezel is loomed. The watch features a wave pattern on the dial, triple register, and a date. It features a titanium case to make this 51 millimeter megalith wearable on a normal wrist, and hinge style lugs that are ultra short and stubby. You can also see this 1,000 meter diver features a helium escape valve, so there's a lot of serious hardware on this watch. It also features a deployant clasp that features trigger release, as well as a push button slider system so you can incrementally adjust it over a dive suit. This is a wonderfully thought out watch, and although it's going to be comically huge on any wrist, you can wear the thing. 18 millimeters thick. This is truly a dive watch, and at $2,500 you can afford to make this an occasional watch, a sports watch, a beach watch, and still have a collection of other timepieces that are better balanced and more versatile. So between this and the Hysek, I would probably pick this. I like Oris, I like what they do, and in titanium, eyes closed, I would have guessed more like a 43 or a 44. It doesn't feel like a 51 on the wrist. Jumping into the chat box, I could see we've got Robin Rickett saying he doesn't think Oris does, or maybe he's responding to someone else's comment, because Oris definitely does divers. And I could see Blue Shirt Buddha saying that those just joining missed a day date. That's all right. You can always rewind me. And I can see right here we have RDF saying, I see, he must be our late joiner. And Jason Starrick, Oris always a ton of bang for the buck. Jason, you are absolutely correct. Let me show you a watch that is just a ton of bang for a ton of bucks. Objectively, this is about as crazy as watches get. Bethune DB28 Digital, launched in 2014. It's a 45 millimeter grade 5 titanium, and I do mean polished grade 5 titanium jump hour with scrolling minutes and a 1,112 year spherical moon phase at center. Now, let's get super close here. You can see this is real rose lathe, barleycorn, or Grand Orge pattern. And then at center, you have blued titanium to create the cosmos, blued titanium to create the band over the scrolling minutes, and then everything that looks like a star is actually a hand-applied polished white gold cabochon. And because a jump hour really needs to be seen in action, first let me show you the floating lugs. They go from 53 to 57.9 millimeters lug to lug, so it's actually a floating geometry, and when you send the watch back to De Bethune, they can actually fit shorter or longer lugs depending on your ergonomic needs. Now let me show you the jump hour system, because it is remarkably precise, instantaneous, and hugely entertaining. Now, turn it all over. De Bethune caliber 2114. Twin mainspring barrel, manual wind, 6-day power reserve. Get super close, and I want to show you some cool features, but the balance is a solid disc of silicon with a rim of white gold to maximize the polar moment and make it thermally static so it will not expand or contract in the hot and cold. You can see there are springs on both sides of the balance. So there's Inca block at center, and then there's actually a shock protection spring on both sides, triple shock protection known as triple parachute. You can see there are own off-centered, oddly shaped flat hairspring that beats concentrically just like an overcoil without the vulnerabilities of an overcoil. And though you can't see it, they also have their own unlubricated silicone escape wheel. De Bethune, 150 watches a year under Denis Flageolet. As good as it gets. I don't know why there isn't a wait list backed up 4 years for this company. That said, I can think of a company that does have a wait list, backed up obnoxiously, and we're going to get to it in a moment, but I want to show you one more value proposition. A watch released in 2006 that was in its day a $15,500 watch. This is the famous/infamous Zenith Defy Extreme. 46 millimeters. The watch is in blackened titanium. It features a unidirectional dive bezel. It features a helium escape valve. It features 1,000 meter diving depth, and in the hand, it feels indestructible. Multi-level dial with engine turning as well as carbon fiber. It has incredible dial depth, luster, nuance, and yes, it does look its price. A full aspect crown guard, and if you turn it all over, you can see this thing is built like a bank vault or a bomb bunker. Absolutely stunning in titanium with rubber strap. This is actually the way I would buy it. Now, it may be stunning in a repulsive way. It may be stunning in an attractive way. But now, priced at about $5,500, we can discuss this watch on its merits rather than its frankly unrealistic original retail. And at the end of the day, this is a robust Zenith El Primero caliber 400 in there that will get the job done. It's everything you love about the El Primero, and for frankly, used Omega money, you're getting what was in its day a Royal Oak Offshore rival. I like it, it's wearable, and on the strap it makes so much more sense because the DLC coated bracelet would scratch obnoxiously. This is the way to own it, and it's more comfortable on a small wrist. So this is not for everyone, but I do believe we will rehabilitate the Terry Nataf Zeniths someday. He built the brand, its distribution, its complications capability, its museum. He deserves credit for what he did right, and I think these watches someday will have a sort of ironic fashion appeal, kind of like watches from the 70s in our era. All right, now, jumping into a company that is love or hate, and which I both invade against and defended on last night's Watches Tonight, Richard Mille, and one of the unarguables, truly one of the great watches Richard Mille has announced in its entire history from 2001 to the present. The RM2 of 2002 was a landmark watch. In 2004, the RM2 Tourbillon gained a carbon fiber baseplate made of carbon fiber composite with nanotubes, super light, shock resistant, and more durable than the titanium plates used previously. The watch is rose gold and surprisingly wearable. 44.5 millimeters lug to lug, 12.4 millimeters thick, it's as thin as a Daytona, and 36.7 across from 9 to 3. You can see there's a tourbillon. Let's get super close because this one deserves it, guys. You see that tourbillon beating away at 21.6 in a 1-minute circuit, and then you can see that little clutch at 5. You actually see the push button function selector. That's setting, that's neutral, that's winding. The crown does not pull out. It has a push button system so you don't wear out the stem tube and the seals. You also don't have the vulnerability of a withdrawn crown. 2 systems. You can see the barrel underneath the skeletonized bridge. You have a power reserve. It's between 78 and 80 hours manual wind power reserve. And then right next to it, there's a torque meter that lets you know the health of your watch. It tells you how much torque the system is outputting from the mainspring barrel. Turn it all over. You can see it's both carbon fiber and titanium with a remarkably elaborate keyless works that can be removed as a module for easy servicing. Check out the star wheel and spring system that's used for selecting the function. It has its own almost mini column wheel clutch on the back. All of this hand finished. This is made by Audemars Piguet Renault Papi, not by Vaucher, not by DD. This is actually made by APRP, and it has many similarities to the original Royal Oak concept aesthetically and mechanically, and of course that wonderfully wearable Richard Mille tonneau case. I'm going to throw this one on the wrist. This is one of the great Richard Mille watches. This is one of those cover of the auction catalog watches from the year 2030. Easy to wear on my wrist. You can see it is super slim and flat, curved to trace the arc of the wrist. This is a surprisingly wearable watch. It's anything but oversized. AP on the outside, or on the inside, Richard Mille on the outside. So AP in, Richard Mille out, Vol'Gin case, as good as it gets. This would be my choice among the RM options. Guys, thank you so much for joining me tonight. I want you you to win that free vintage moon watch. The only way to do it is to click the link in the description. Those who got up early, those who stayed up late, thank you so much. And a special shout out to my friends who are watching this in a second or third language. I know how difficult it must be, and I really appreciate that you listen to me in English, even though I never speak any of your languages. Big appreciation. Thank you so much. Thanks to you, thanks to my crew, Time Out, Tim Out, and thank you for logging on.